Hello everyone, this is SWTOR Snoopy here, back with another video. Today, I want to discuss and explain why I believe Star Wars The Old Republic is an amazing hybrid MMO. When I say hybrid MMO, I mean a game that has many options as a typical MMO, but can be played in other gameplay styles that a player so chooses. For example, a player could play entirely solo if they want to, or on the other hand, a player could do raids and other group content such as PvP. While SWTOR has its faults, I continue to find that this game has done a good job at uniting and inviting both the solo and group players to play. I thought this would be interesting to talk about since SWTOR has strayed away from the look of being a traditional MMO and has become its own thing. This isn't a discussion reviewing the game and giving it a score. Rather, it's a talk about what elements BioWare has incorporated and included to bridge the gap between solo and group players. And of course, I find these elements very well done. As I know this video will likely spark interest, I urge you guys to write a comment saying your opinions and thoughts after watching this video. Also, there will be talking points on screen and in the description down below. This will allow you guys to jump to a particular point that I talk about and to follow along with the video. With all that being said, let's jump right into this discussion. Alrighty guys, so here we go. Now I do want to say these first two talking points are going to be incredibly short, as it's going to just be a quick rundown of the game content that is available for both group content and solo. So the first talking point is going to be group content and MMO experience. So when it comes down to the group content available within this game, you have raids, PvP, ranked PvP, GSF, flashpoints, uprisings, heroics, and a bunch of other things that you can do as a team. The good thing about this game is there is a progression rating, and you also can do some hardcore PvP with ranked 4v4 arenas. There is also a gear grind, but with the newest patch, you can decide if you want to do that both as a solo or group player, and there is a focus on MMO aspects. So that's the very quick rundown, a quick TLDR of the group content within the game. The next talking point is going to be a focus on story, and in particular, this is a talk of the solo options. So many solo players have come to the game due to story and being able to do the content at their own pace. This game is free to play and people want to try out the classes and their unique story options. You don't have to group up with anyone to experience any of the story options within the game. You can play the game entirely alone if you want to, and you only have to pay $15 a month to unlock all the content. So when it comes down to story, this game is very generous in the fact that you can complete a lot of story-driven flashpoints entirely alone. You can also choose to never really group up in the game and just accomplish and complete all of the different story options available and to experience a lot of the game's content. And that's going to be it for that little talking point right there. But looking at these two ideas, BioWare has clearly structured this game to be diverse when it comes down to solo and group content. Now, how on earth do they merge these two concepts into one game and they attempt to keep players happy? This is going to lead into my next talking point of the balancing act. What makes this a hybrid MMO? We keep talking about how this game has solo options and group options, but how does this all fit together? Well, of course, with this balancing act, we have not only solo droids for flashpoints, so you can play as a solo player and get a solo droid to help you out, so you don't have to group up with anyone. There's also modes for all group content, so you have ranked PvP, you have your raids, etc. Then, as I quickly mentioned with the solo droids, there's solo story mixed in with flashpoints that can be played both at a normal and hard difficulty. And of course, with 6.0, it has been introduced that there is a play how you want type gearing. And I believe that this is a good motto for the game entirely at this point, because with the new gearing system, you don't have to do one thing in particular to get gear. There's a lot of diverse options that you can go through. For example, you can do some of the new dailies, you can do flashpoints, you can do PvP. There's so many options now with how you decide to do gearing. And not only that, with the gearing, it is very interesting because there is certain ways that you can get gear very fast. For example, you can run flashpoints a ton of times and get gear insanely quickly. But on the other hand, you don't have to do that. You can play exactly how you want to get some of the best gear. And I feel like this has kind of become one of those games that you don't need to feel like you have a commitment to. You can of course have a commitment to the game if you want to, but the game is more open to different player gameplay styles. This is a game where you can sub whenever you want to play operations and ranked PvP. And it's also important to note that everything else is available as a preferred player once subbing one time, besides some restrictions. With a traditional MMO, it would be necessary to stay subbed at all times, but with this game, you really only have to sub if you deem it completely necessary. And that leads to something with my personal experience, is that there's plenty of times when I'm not subbed to the game, and Bioware probably doesn't like to hear that, or rather, they probably don't like to hear the idea of only subbing at certain sections of content releases. But I'd argue that not needing to stay subbed constantly is one of the best parts about this game. You don't have to play it like a traditional MMO and be a sub throughout the year. You can access almost all the content even when unsubbed, and can play the game in your own way and pace. If you want to subscribe throughout the year, there's nothing wrong with that. Only sub for a month or two for the story? Absolutely fine. That's the kind of thing that makes this game so good as a hybrid, in my opinion. It's a game where the customer is able to play how they envision. So this leads into my next talking point, which is hybrid MMO. Why it's good. So after all this talk of these different elements being combined together, some of you may be asking, why does being a hybrid MMO matter? What does it matter if it's even good? Well, I'll tell you. Since we've laid out this game appeals to both solo and group players, it's apparent how this game could be considered a hybrid. But the reason I find it so amazing is that it brings more players to the game, it's able to widen an audience. While some choices in the game's history have been very controversial, and there's some parts that are focused on more than others, more players are coming in due to hearing about the story, but also, people want to play a Star Wars MMO with group content and a player base. Not only that, this unites players and opens the door to play really how you feel. You don't have to be confined to playing just one way, i.e. an MMO or just a single player game. You can test out multiple gameplay styles. Another thing is that you can leave and return to the game and not feel lost. This game isn't a complete grind fest that you feel like you're missing out on if you leave. You really can decide what you want to make of the game. And another thing is that there is diversifying content. The same thing can get old very fast, but luckily this game has the different options and ways to play. And finally, I find this game more consumer friendly in some cases. There's more options as a consumer to choose how you play. For example, the gearing and completing things that you want to. I know that it could be argued that if you are a free-to-play or preferred players, there are restrictions. And I do agree that those restrictions are very annoying and they can cause an inconvenience. But I feel like when it comes down to the base content, it can be consumer friendly depending on how you play. So this leads into my final little discussion point, and that is my final thoughts. I believe that the game succeeds in bringing a fan base together and trying to please everyone around. It's a game that has embraced change and has continued to take risks in an effort to please solo and group players. I know that the game has divided fans a number of times throughout the history of the game due to game design choices. I think the biggest example of this is Knights of the Fallen Empire and not including any type of group content. But expansions such as Onslaught are a good example of trying to bring back a balance and mixture of content for both solo and group players. Hopefully Bioware continues this trend throughout and keeps the player base happy. But game updates aside, from a content standpoint, there's quite a bit to do for purely MMO players and for people who only want to play solo. This game can appeal to a larger audience, and it's why I think the game succeeds in that department of being a hybrid and not just a traditional MMO. While I think this game succeeds in being a good hybrid MMO, another question is raised. Is SWTOR worth constantly paying $15 a month for? In my opinion, it really depends on the individual. I've made videos in the past about why I'm unsubbed so often, as there are many times where I don't use any features that warrant a sub. My take is that unless you know you're going to raid all the time and play ranked PvP, there's no point to stay subbed unless a new expansion comes out to unlock. But again, it's up to the individual to decide what they want, and I can't knock people for their decisions of subbing. You could say that SWTOR fails in the perspective of not enticing players to stay subbed constantly, but for getting a wider audience, I think the game is doing something right. Also, subbed or not, plenty of people are still having fun and enjoying the game, and at the end of the day, that's the most important part. And more importantly, people continue to return to this beloved game, and hopefully it's a trend that continues for years to come. But in conclusion, I find that SWTOR works well as a hybrid MMO. It's a game that shows you can be both an MMO and a single-player game at the same time. It's also a game that has done a good job of bridging gameplay styles between player types and making sure to include everybody in new level caps, areas, and gearing. So yeah, those were my thoughts on why I think SWTOR is an amazing hybrid MMO. As I said in the intro, I would love to hear what you guys think in the comments. Do you agree or disagree? Make sure to let me know. Anyways, that's gonna do it for this SWTOR discussion episode. So I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, then make sure to leave a like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.